Hi and welcome back. Today I have an abstract watercolor journal spread again, and here you see me creating a frame for the spread using that washi tape I received from Artix, which is the company that sent me the Paul Rubens metallic watercolors to try out. I did this in one of my past videos. You will find this in the watercolor art journaling playlist, which I will link up at the end of this video. I enjoy playing intuitively with watercolors because it's very playful, it's relaxing, and there is no pressure to create anything special. It's just for fun. Here you see me switching to my color palette sketchbook whenever I find a palette that I like or color combinations. I make a page in this book and then I have it for reference, and I can pick one out when I create an art journal spread. I'm wetting all my paints with a water spray bottle to make sure that they reactivate quickly and easy. And I also have now 2 tins of watercolors. The reason is that I still have no idea which colors are my go-to ones and which I prefer, so my box with the mixed colors was not enough. I always had and still have an extra box with colors, but this extra box I'm wetting here is the pastel palette, and these are the pastel watercolors from White Nights, which I will use on the spread. Not all of them, but some. And I now have 2 big watercolor palettes where I have in one the warm colors, reds and yellows and oranges and pinks, and in the right I have the cool colors with blue, green and violet. I'm starting with a big mop brush and just bring the first color onto the paper, and it's really just an intuitive play. I just let the colors do its thing. I try to not cover the whole page. I always try to give it some white space, which brings more light into the painting and makes it more interesting because it automatically gets more contrast. What I also have separately are the core watercolors because of their property with the high flow, and I just want to know when I'm using such a color, because I do this for a reason and I don't want to have these in my go-to watercolors. The book I'm using is the watercolor journal from Kunst und Papier. It's not a super great paper and it's also buckling a lot, but I think for a watercolor journal it has a really good price and many pages. I only use the right side of the pages because I don't like the back side when the foresight is painted, because of the texture it gets and the buckling. So I only use 1 page per spread, and I'm clipping the papers together so my page doesn't buckle that much. Here I'm mixing some blue into the yellow-orange areas, and you always have to check when you mix 2 colors together if they will mix in a nice way or if they will create mud. And that's what I'm looking for on my pages, because when they make a grayish or brown color, then it can happen that the page looks dull and not very bright in the end. But if you want to have neutrals, it's a good way to make your own colors by mixing complementaries, for example. Here I'm using one of the pastel colors from White Nights. I really like them. Of course, it's not typical for watercolors to use these opaque paints, but I am not a fan of these rules. I like to play in the way I like it and I want to play, and then I like to mix opaque colors with watercolors. It's almost like a gouache. I would say the finish of them is a bit more shinier than of a gouache paint. And that's also an opaque color from White Nights, and you can see that the background is dry when I put it on, so it doesn't run immediately into the layer that I have created before. I blend the opaque colors a little bit out in some areas with more water. What I noticed is when you use these opaque colors wet in wet together with a usual watercolor, it creates some kind of a grayish look. I believe it's because of the white pigment, and that's not what I really like, so I try to avoid doing this. To make a page interesting, it's always good to have a high contrast. High contrast does not only mean by values, so black and white, it also means by shapes. For example, you can have sharp edges or some floating edges, which also gives a contrast, and also the colors you are using. If you're using complementaries together, you automatically get a higher contrast. I now try to bring in some really dark value that sometimes is a bit difficult to do because you have a beautiful background and everything looks so nice, and then you want to go in with that really dark color which takes over almost. And here you can see that it mixes in kind of a grayish way when it's wet with the opaque colors. And then you're adding this really dark color which can ruin your page, but it also can make it pop even more. And I think that's what's happening here. The bright colors from the first layer and the second layer really pop out now with these dark shades. Unfortunately, I can't tell you the exact paint names I'm using because I haven't swatched the palettes out yet, and I have not in mind which one I'm using here. Here I'm using a liner brush. It's one of my favorite brushes recently. I had never thought of that, but then I got this brush set from Zen Art with the black tulip brushes, and this set contains a liner brush, and it's awesome for creating lines, and it's also great for writing on a page. Because of its long bristles, it holds a lot of water and paint, and that makes it easier to work with it and create fine details. Here I'm just wetting the brush and then go into the wet paint and draw some lines to let the paint flow into these wet areas. Watercolors always dry lighter than you see them on the paper, so I'm adding another layer to the dark areas because they are dried up really light and some are looking almost gray. I now want to bring in some of these metallic paints I got from Paul Rubens. I really enjoy these. I added some metallic paints I already had. There are just a few in the middle of that watercolor tin, so I have all my metallic colors ready to go. And you see me spritzing them with water because metallic paints always need some time to be reactivated and mix, and that's always good to do this a few minutes before you want to use them. I'm using the orange metallic color over the blue areas, and I want to create some accents. I am using a very thick amount of paint because it gets very opaque when you use them thick, and I want to cover up the blue. I don't want to have just a touch of orange on top. I really want to make it pop. I'm also going to use one of the violet colors to create some small botanicals on top of the page, and here I'm using that violet color which has a bluish glittery part, I would say. So depending on the light you have or you look at it, it looks more on the bluish side or more on the pinkish side. What I feel, and that was also something I recognized the last time I used these glitter colors for botanicals, it's a bit harder to paint fine thin lines because the paint itself is more thicker than a usual watercolor paint because of the mica in it, of course, and that makes it a bit more difficult, I feel, to draw a really fine stem and then it leaves. It all gets a bit more heavier than with normal watercolor. And I think it's also some kind of a practice. Sometimes I'm stepping away from the page and have a look at it if I miss something in certain areas, and then I come back later and add some more details. Here I am covering up this grayish circle I made before, and I will just add some more circles with this dark mixture. And here you can see that glittery effect of the metallic paints. I want to bring in some more botanical elements with the Posca paint pens, and therefore I also have a little inspiration journal which I fill from time to time. I use acrylic paints for its background and just try out different combinations and pencil strokes, and then I draw some botanical shapes on top. And I'm picking this one you just saw, and I will recreate this on my spread. For my botanical paintings or drawings, I'm very much inspired by some old vintage botanical books I have. I often flip through them and then try to simplify the shapes and create some sketches in my sketchbook, and then I use these to fill my abstract paintings. In addition to these botanical shapes, I also make some marks with the Posca paint pens. I'm filling in the leaves with the white paint pen to make them pop a bit more. And what I also want to use on this page are these leaves. I also like the moon, but I think I will go with the leaves. Creating these shapes and marks on the page is my favorite part of the process, and sometimes I just not able to stop. To finish the page up, I'm using some splatters. I was a bit afraid if they will look good on the page, but I think they match very well, and I really like the look of them. And that is my finished spread for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you are a bit inspired to grab your watercolors and play. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.